Hello, everyone. My name is Robert, and welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Savage Worlds game system / game framework. Today, we are going to cover powers and arcane backgrounds. In our last video, over 2 years ago, our party had just finished clearing the docks to discover signs that there was more going on than simple mob activity. We also picked up a new player character, Esmeralda, the Witch of Shadows. Esmeralda is built in the same way that Sam the Detective was, except that when choosing her edges, she picked up the arcane background edge in magic. When you choose your arcane background edge, you have to decide what kind of power you have and where it comes from. Are your powers granted by a divine or infernal source and fueled with your faith? Have you mastered the power of magic through study and sacrifice? Do you possess a superior mind with psionic capabilities? Are you a brilliant inventor, creating your powers through gadgets, potions, or other items? Or are you gifted in some other way, a mutant or from an alien planet, perhaps exposed to some strange chemical or energy? Each type of arcane background is unique in different and subtle ways. Each background determines where you draw your power from, how many powers you start with, how many power points you have to fuel those powers, and what the related skill is to use your powers. Each background has its own skill used in activating and using powers. This skill isn't free either, so make sure you save some skill points in character creation so you aren't casting spells with an unskilled check. Also note that the skill to use your powers is different from the skill to know about religious or arcane subjects. Now that you have your background and skill, we can select powers. All the powers will have a number of things in common. Rank designates the minimum rank your character has to be to select this power. Power points is how much it costs to activate the power as is. Range is the distance your power can reach. If this is listed as an attribute, then it is simply the maximum of the die of that attribute. Duration is how long a power lasts once activated. If the power has a duration longer than instant, the caster can extend its activation at the cost of 1 power point. So a power that lasts 5 rounds can be extended another 5 rounds for 1 extra point, or another 10 rounds for 2, and so on. And finally, most powers will have a few suggested trappings. When you select your power, you must select trappings to define how your powers work and manifest, be they fireballs, shadow bolts, or swarms of ghostly kittens. There really aren't any restrictions on this in the main book, except for the weird science background where your powers must manifest as an item, potion, or something that you make external to you. A trapping's effect on the game is left somewhat up to the game master, and usually comes in the form of synergy. Synergy isn't always opposites interacting, so you may not get a bonus from attacking a ice giant with fire, but you will get bonuses for tangential effects. You will do extra damage throwing lightning powers at an opponent standing in water, or wearing a suit of armor. You might also do less damage throwing fire at a robot, which is immune to heat. This is all up to the game master, of course. Aside from trappings, when you select your power, you can also opt to limit it in some fashion. You can either remove one of the modes a power can take, like making growth/shrink into only shrink, or you can reduce the range of a power to self or touch if the range is greater to start with. Either of these options reduces the cost of a power by 1 power point, but you cannot reduce the cost of a power to 0 power points by taking these options. Esmeralda is a Witch of Shadows, so her starting powers will be Power Bolt for a ranged attack, Boost/lower trait so she can buff or debuff, and Protection to improve her armor. All of these powers gain shadow trappings, a shadow motif, and her own name for them. The Game Master has said that these powers will gain positive synergy when her targets are in shadow, and negative synergy when they're in bright light. If a different character, a weird science background user for instance, wanted to use the same powers, they would come out quite different, having different trappings and being used in different ways. Now that you have your powers, we can talk about activating them. This is a fairly simple process. Choose a power, select any power modifiers, apply any shorting if you're willing to take the risk, and then roll your skill check. You're going to roll for a target number of 4 unless your power is ranged touch and your target is hostile, in which case you'll roll against their parry. If you succeed on your skill roll, you'll spend the number of power points required and the power is activated. Some powers have additional benefits from a raise, so it's important to read through the power itself to understand all of the options. If you fail the skill roll, you spend 1 power point as payment, and the power doesn't activate. If you critically fail, which is a 1 on your skill die and your wild die, you gain a level of fatigue, which makes it more difficult to do anything, and any active powers you have immediately cease. Now let's talk power modifiers for a moment. These are little things that can change your casting from time to time to make it beneficial against specific targets. You might add armor piercing to a power to give it AP to get past heavy foes. You could add lingering damage to a power, causing it to eat away at a target over time. Or you could make a power selective, targeting or avoiding certain people within its area of effect. There are also power modifiers for specific powers. The power barrier, which erects a barrier between you and a target, has a specific power modifier letting you give the barrier damage to anyone who touches it. All these power modifiers cost additional power points on top of the power cost of the original power, and are, of course, subject to the Game Master's approval. Shorting is an optional way to pay less for a power in exchange for a bit of risk. You can reduce the cost of a power by 1 power point in exchange for a -1 modifier on your skill check. You can continue to take this risk, decreasing the cost and gaining additional negative modifiers until you have negated the cost of the power and any power modifier applied. There is one other caveat, though. When you short your power, your only options are success or critical failure. Any failure is automatically elevated to critical failure when shorting. Aside from that, the only thing to note is recovery of power points. Your points recover at a base rate of 5 points per hour of rest. There are edges that can increase this rate of recovery, along with edges that grant you additional power points and powers. So please read through the power edges if you're going to take an arcane background. This covers everything for powers. Join us next time when we cover special rules, chases, vehicles, and other unique situations in the Savage World system. Thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again before another 2 years pass. Thank you very much.